Bueno, The Beginner's Guide. No tengo ni idea de qué esperar de este juego, la verdad. Creo que es de los creadores de Stanley Parable, el cual es un juego un poco extraño. Creo que la gente exageró un poco con la calidad de ese juego. Está bien, es una experiencia, pero bueno. Este, como ya digo, creo que es de los mismos creadores y tiene pinta de ser un juego raruno. Así que vamos a ver. Creo que la he cagado calibrando los botones del mando porque me ponían algunas opciones. Claro, yo qué coño sé que son algunas de estas. Pues no sé en qué botón ponerlas. Pero bueno, iniciemos el juego. Y nada, dejémonos llevar por la experiencia. Sí. Oh, vale. Ok.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing The Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game
Sí.
tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work
Triste
pointed me in a
historia.
very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk
Oh.
around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment.
Ok.
What I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. Of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is.
Sí.
And that's exactly what we're going to do here.
Ok.
So,
No sé si lo que
it's
está contando es verdad o no, pero
Coda
bueno.
starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, you know, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made.
Vale.
Until suddenly one day, he just
Oye.
stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again.
No el mejor juego para comentar, la verdad, pero bueno. Mejor para mi voz.
It'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch.
Igual. Vamos a ver. ¿Hay subtítulos? Sonido. Subtítulos. Igual debería haberlo hecho antes. Sorry, bueno, está hablando de que hay un tal Koda o Kodak, algo así, que ha creado muchos juegos entre 2009, 2011 o algo así, pero que paró y dice que había creado el mapa este del Counter-Strike. Ya digo, estos juegos del pavo este son muy meme, son muy troll, así que no sé hasta qué punto lo que ha dicho es verdad. Supongo que no, o igual un poco sí, pero bueno, vamos a continuar. Uy, que me voy donde no es. ¿Lo he hecho bien?
You can email me at daveyWreden@gmail.com.
Creo que no. Sonido. Sí que está. Igual tiene que terminar la frase.
Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
Ok. Vale. Ajá. Vale. Tiene que ser en castellano. Hola. ¿Esto qué es? Halo. Halo. ¿Te parece al primer nivel del Halo? Ah, mira, ahí están los subtítulos. Coda, sí. Ok. Vale. Ok. La edición de sonido un poco así. Ah, no, no tengo más balas. Oh, no. Bueno, ¿qué se le va a hacer? ¿Puedo entrar? ¿Sí, no? No.
It kind of looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere.
Ok.
You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets.
Ya lo he visto.
Ultimately, we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
A ver, cuando he dicho que no sabía si lo que estaba contando era verdad o no, entiendo que lo que está... Por ejemplo, esto es todo de coña, ¿no? Por los loles de este juego no iba a ser nada. Lo han hecho solo para esto, supongo. Pero lo que no sé es si el tal Coda existe de verdad y si realmente hizo un nivel del Counter-Strike. Ah. No está mal. Ah, bien. Y es un cuadrado. Vale. Oh. ¿Y si quiero ir por aquí? Nope. Ok. Wow. Ok.
Apparently, this space station has a labyrinth on it.
Bien.
Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
No. Si vuelvo.
Or if you'd really like to solve the labyrinth, you're welcome to do that too.
No sé qué... Ok. No debería estar haciendo esto. Lo sé. Pero no me esperaba que me fuera a dejar hacerlo, así que... ya he perdido completamente la noción de por dónde he venido, así que... Ok, voy a utilizar mi trusty técnica de siempre ir a la derecha. Siempre a la derecha. Y al final... realmente es la mejor forma de hacer un laberinto. Tirar siempre a la derecha. Bueno, o a la izquierda. Pero siempre mantener el mismo sentido. Porque así... aquí por donde me he entrado, ¿verdad? Creo que sí. Sí. Porque así, sí o sí... Sí o sí vas a pasar por... O sea, no vas a volver dos veces por el mismo sitio, a no ser que hubieras llegado a un punto muerto. Mira, lo he conseguido.
Okay, this is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Okay.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature.
Okay.
Your body could stop the beam.
Oops.
It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Sí. ¿Por qué no? Tengo que... Si no... ¡Oh! Vaya.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Ok. Vamos a ver. Oh. Ok. Pues es
The beam
un...
causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place,
No puedo moverme.
juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Venga. Vamos a ver. Ok. No puedo moverme. Ah, sí que puedo.
In this game you can
Oh.
walk backwards.
Oh. Ok. Ok. Guay. Ok. Entiendo. Y la música también está hacia atrás. Vale. Ok.
So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Coda's trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
Ok. A ver. Esto se parece al Shin Megami Tensei 3. Oh. Déjame adivinar, no voy a llegar a ningún sitio, ¿no? ¿Cómo encontrará la fuerza? Ah, pues sí. Solo que ya no hay.
It's a short little thought. It says what it wants to say and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick.
Sí.
Okay, next one.
Otra de las razones por las que estoy jugando a este juego, spoiler, es bastante corto. De hecho, probablemente lo termine en esta sesión. Ok, ya puedo caminar normal. No puedo moverme mucho. Solo por el camino de piedra. Ajá. Sí. Uf.
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
Okay.
Oftentimes, Coda would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games. I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
Oops. Ok. Se me hace muy raro. Cuando estoy mirando hacia aquí es como que no avanzo ni nada. Deduzco que tengo que ir por la escalera, pero... ¿Cómo lo sabe, ¿Cómo lo sabe el cabrón? Y probablemente no haya nada, realmente. No, esta no es la clase de juego que realmente tiene algo súper secreto escondido, ¿no? Es bastante directo. O tal vez eso es lo que quiere que nosotros pensemos. Aunque bueno, un pequeño clip de voz ya es... Sonido, tío, ¿qué está pasando aquí? Un pequeño clip de voz ya es bastante secreto, realmente. Ok, pues vámonos por la escalera. Y para arriba. Y a ver qué pasa. Todo esto puedo ir hacia atrás. Sí. Utilicemos lo aprendido. No. No llego. No
Once you've been
llego.
slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if the game is not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press the use key on your gamepad, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
Ok. Ah. Ok. Estoy tentado a volver hacia atrás. What? ¿Esto qué es? ¿El club de la lucha? No. Dejadme en paz.
A room that's warm and nice and
Ah.
filled with little ideas for games.
Qué wholesome.
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
I get it. Por cierto, me di cuenta de que, bueno, tengo una torre bastante ruidosa y mi micro pillaba bastante ruido. Que ya de por sí el Yeti pilla un poquito de ruido de por sí. Así que creo que tal y como lo tengo ahora debería escucharse algo mejor. Aunque bueno, luego le paso un filtro antirruido, pero evidentemente cuanto menos pille de serie en el rodaje, pues mejor. Ok. 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 Ya digo, esto como el Stanley Parable es más directo de lo que puede parecer.
For Coda, it's an actual puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
What the fuck is this? What? Ok, es una habitación. No veo nada. Deduzco que no tengo que ver nada. Ok. Se abrió. Hombre, es que de todas formas puedo pasar, así que... Si me quedo ahí dentro, ¿qué pasa? ¿Se abre? Ajá.
Don't forget that solution because we're going to see this puzzle again soon.
Ok.
We're gonna see it a lot.
Vale. Eso debe ser algo, pero... Como no lo sé. Oye, ¿y si lo pulso y me voy? Si hago... Seguro que no he conseguido nada con ello, pero bueno. Ok. Ok.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve the puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough. Alright, now I'm going to modify the game again, so that when you press the use key on your gamepad, remove all of the walls from this room.
Uy, pinta mal esto. Esperar que me ha llegado un mensaje por WhatsApp. Ah, nada. Hostia.
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same. Is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player.
Ok.
So if your role here is not to understand, then
Wow.
what is it?
Buena pregunta. Vaya, pensaba que había... Esto otra vez. Ok. Vamos a ver qué pasa ahora. Oh. Ok.
Aha. So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow.
Ajá.
Could even be that the stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we
vaya.
can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
Ok. Vale. Ok. Oh. Vaya, ¿esto está inclinado? Sí, está inclinado. Si voy para allá. Vale, ya no puedo ir más para atrás. Que yo sepa. Vamos a ver. Vamos a ver con qué nos sorprenden ahora. Voy a seguir bajando sin parar. Y esa casa va a ser enorme.
Let's talk about video game
No.
development for a second.
Habría sido gracioso.
Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development.
Oh. Ah, me están
All
llamando.
of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines,
Pero
Source has certain things
me da
that
que
it
voy
does
a pasar
well,
un
and it
poco.
has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well. The tools available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games, to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
Ok. Vamos a... ¡Ah! Ok. Ups. Pensaba que no podría hacer eso. Pero sí. Que hay ahí abajo. Supongo que tenía que hacerlo de todas formas, así que... Ok. El hoyo. El número este que me ha llamado, es que no lo he pillado porque creo que es Repsol o algo así. Ya me han llamado otras veces. La cuestión es que no... O sea, lo pillo, nadie dice nada y cuelgan. Yo miro por internet y dicen que es de Repsol, pero a mí es que ni me dicen nada. Oye, en mi bot dice, no, Dios mío, nos ha pillado el móvil de verdad. Oh, no. Oh, no. Déjenme en paz. Oh, what? Oh. Sí, claro, porque tú lo... no puedo. Bueno, pues sí. Pues...
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
Bueno, no sé. ¿Va a cerrarme? Es que si me hubiera cerrado de verdad...
This is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
Creo que está intentando decirnos que no hagamos lo mismo aquí. Y es verdad. No hay ningún secreto. Vamos. Deduzco. no hay ningún secreto ultra mega especial más allá de lo que el narrador, creador de este juego, pues quiere que veamos. Deduzco, ¿no? Es un juego extraño, pero no es esa clase de juego. Oh, no puedo. Oh. Pero ¿y si sigo por aquí? No. ¿Veis? No hay secretos. No hay secretos aquí. ¿Qué coño es eso? Oh, un pequeño punto de luz. Ok. Oh, esos 3 puntos otra vez. Por alguna extraña razón. ¿Qué significan? ¿Qué son esos 3 puntos? Oh, vaya.
It's the puzzle again, with the exact same solution as the last time.
Seguro. Me va a hacer... Me va a engañar.
There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over.
Oh.
But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
Yeah. Ay, que me muero. Ok. Me pone un poco nervioso no poder saltar, pero lo entiendo. Y aunque ya digo que no hay nada... No creo que este juego esté muy lleno de secretos, precisamente. Tengo esa extraña... Ese extraño cosquilleo siempre de que me voy a estar perdiendo algo.
Coda begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities. Use the buttons on your gamepad to respond.
Mierda, ahora es cuando... Vale, creo que... X y creo que el RB para esto. Es que me cago en todo. A ver. No, no era este el botón. Ok. Vale, ese sí, que lo he puesto bien. Sí. Vale. Oh, Dios mío. Sí. Sí, ok. Vale. Tengo miedo. ¿Qué es esto? Tampoco me han dado mucha opción para responder. Ya sé que es a propósito, pero... no. Ok. Esto se está poniendo interesante. En realidad lleva siendo interesante desde el principio. Nunca sabes qué esperarte con estos juegos. Ok. Ok. A ver con qué nos encontramos. Oh, Dios mío. Es la lámpara del título.
It's a lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason Coda fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, you know, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're gonna see it in the work as well. His games are just gonna become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Vale. ¿Algo más? No. Abril de 2009. ¿Estamos yendo por orden? Creo que no. Me están escribiendo. ¿O no? No. Cosas. Vaya, me he saltado el texto ese. ¿Qué se le va a hacer? ¿Qué se le va a hacer? ¿Qué? Bonita habitación. Pues no. ¿Esto qué es? D por Manuel Álvarez. Oh, Dios mío, estoy viendo un mosquito, creo. ¿Es un mosquito? ¡Fuera! ¡Fuera!
This was actually the first game of his that I ever played. This was shortly after I met him at a weekend game jam in Sacramento, where I grew up.
He perdido el mosquito de vista, socorro.
This very level, and it was just so different from anything that anyone else was doing. So right away